Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 68. And you know what that's really close to? 70. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargaming experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 YouTube videos a week and you stream every single night. How could you possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, it's hard to talk about anything else besides the squats! Games Workshop came out with a brand new squat unit, and it's pretty enlightening. Exo Armor turns Leagues of Votann elites into mountains of muscle and guns. I mean, probably the Exo Armor doesn't turn them into mountains of muscle. They probably have to start out that way. But they have lots of guns, too. They have to write something. When it comes to protecting their all-important ancestral cores, the Leagues of Votann demand no less than the very best weapons and armor around. The honored warriors who wield them are true elites waiting to battle, clad in servo-assisted exo armor, carrying a name that commands respect from all kin, the Annier Hearthguard. Wow, that sounds exactly like Space Marines, the best of the best, clad in only the best armor and weapons who protect, and yeah, they're not Terminators. They're not Terminators. They're Hearthguard. Selected from the most accomplished fighters in the Kinhold, again, not Terminators. The Annier Hearthguard have many roles, from bodyguards to deadly first strike troops. They're just the Terminators, oh my goodness. Each Hearthguard has proven themselves over many years of frontline combat, ascending purely from the virtue of their deed, just as the staunch meritocracy of the leagues require. Like Hearthkin warriors, Hearthguard are dependable fighters, but their experience and inch-thick battle plating takes the kin's natural durability to a whole new level. Crack units of Annier Hearthguard can be trusted to hold the line and inspire their fellows to stand firm even in the face of untold horrors. They aren't all take and no give either. What? They aren't all take and no give either. I think what they're trying to say is like they don't just take a beating, they can dish it out too, but it doesn't sound, it's weird phrasing. Each Annier is equipped with a Volkite disintegrator and a shoulder-mounted grenade launcher, laying down a solid curtain of fire as they advance. Once the Annier Hearthguard join the melee, there's just as formidable, lashing out with devastating concussion gauntlets. These marvels use ancient technologies to increase the mass of a warrior's fist as they swing, turning an already brutal uppercut into an earth-shattering blow that can lift a hulking orc right off their feet. Those warriors who prefer deftness of the sword over the raw power of their gauntlets can fit a thrumming plasma blade to their wrist, perfect for slicing and dicing the galaxy's less damage-resistant dangers. Wow, they're really not selling the sword, the galaxy's less damage-resistant dangers. If you're fighting stuff that sucks, you might as well just use the sword. You save the fist for the good stuff. Okay. It's fine. The fluff that they wrote is perfectly acceptable. But let's look at these models. My heart says I don't like them. They're fine. There's a lot to appreciate, but I feel like the squats. Maybe it's just because I love the steampunk dwarves from Age of Sigmar too much. But I don't know, they just feel kind of same normal science fiction dudes. I mean, it's hard. The armor is neat. I like the shapes in the armor. The poses are fine. The shoulder pads are very big, which is kind of a 40K aesthetic. Although it's really only a Space Marine aesthetic. And maybe it should be left up to the Space Marines, because these guys' shoulder pads are even way bigger than the Space Marines' shoulder pads. But I don't know, there's just something about power armor that looks less intimidating on short, stocky dwarves. Like, I think I would have preferred something a little bit more stylized. But I have been staring at these guys for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I have some ideas and some thoughts. So first, do they look just like the Terran from StarCraft? Yes. Yes, they do. If you look at them side by side, it's really similar. I mean, it's not like so similar that there's any shenanigans going on with copyright. I mean, power armor is power armor is power armor. They also kind of look like Iron Man suits. They also kind of look like every single power armor that's been in anything. Because at some point, it's just robot parts on a human frame. But it does it does kind of look like the Terran armor, especially the helmet with the flip down visor, and especially the tiny head in the middle of a giant body. They even have little hydraulics. They have them on their waist, and the Terran soldiers have them on their legs. Which honestly, on the legs is a good look. I mean, that's probably where you would want a little pneumatic help for this giant armor. But yeah, it does sort of look like that. It's fine. It looks cool, whatever. But one thing that jumped out to me with this armor is that it doesn't do much to help their frame. Squats have kind of average sized torsos, average sized heads with little arms and little legs. And I feel like the armor accentuates their small features. And if I popped them into Photoshop and I just kind of stretched them, and it looks a lot more normal. Just, it's a weird choice. Yeah. And the old squats from Rogue Trader were incredibly silly, literal egg-shaped Terminator suits, but there's something about that stylization that it's just a stronger concept than just taking a squat and putting it into power armor. I don't know. But one thing I noticed, because I'm like, okay, well, what would these squats have to do for me to like them? And so I was thinking about like, when you're sculpting something, when you're sculpting a miniature, posing is sort of two things. Posing isn't just, is the form doing an interesting action? Because there can be models that are beautifully posed that are just standing. And all miniatures are essentially sculptures, and sculptures use art and design to tell a story. So I can demonstrate this perfectly with this Eldar dude. As you can see, his arm and his sword are creating parallel power lines, and then his back spines and his cape are making more parallel power lines. And it tickles your brain in a way where it's like, yes, that is correct. I really like what they're doing there. And so with the squats, I see a similar power lines. I see kind of these hemispheres radiating out from the bottom, the legs, and then the outer leg and torso, and then the arms and the head and the shoulders. But the giant shoulder pads kind of break those lines. And I think my brain just doesn't like breaking those lines because it makes it feel, I don't want to say amateurish, because clearly whoever designed the squats knows what they're doing, but it's just those shoulder pads really frustrate me. And so I took the shoulder pads off, which I am sure you'll be able to do on the real Mini. And I think it looks way better. I mean, oh my gosh, those shoulder pads dominate the frame, and those shoulder pads also really accentuate how tiny baby little boy feet they have. I mean, when you're looking at a human form, your foot is bigger than your hand because your foot does more work than your hand. But their hands and shoulders are massively bigger than their feet, which makes them feel weird. But you pop off those shoulder pads, all of a sudden, the feet don't look as small because you're not comparing their tiny little feet to these monstrous shoulders they have. And I think that's gonna be, probably not, who knows, I get these squats, definitely gonna be leaving the shoulder pads off, at least one of the shoulder pads off. Maybe a Reaver look where like they have like one shoulder and they kind of advance sideways and that shoulder is kind of protecting their face and side from oncoming fire. But yeah, ditching the shoulders, I think helps dramatically to this overall shape. And then you get those power lines back and they, this little radiation, these radiating shapes in the model that tickle your brain in the right way. I think losing those shoulder pads helps a lot. And then I thought, well, what would it look like if it was painted really good? So I popped him, I continued to pop him into Photoshop, and I painted him up orange with a bright green mohawk and a bright green plasma blade. And I think it looks a lot better. I really dig how it looks in bright colors. Their faces, they have kind of punky haircuts that aren't very well accentuated because they're, brown, black, normal hair colors. But if you just make them crazy colors, I feel like it gives the model so much more attitude. I mean, in that flavor text I just read, the squats sound I mean, it's a thing in Warhammer, but everything is about duty and honor. But why can't the squats just kind of be fun? Why can't they just be living their best life? And you know what? They live their best life, and then they die, and their consciousness is put into the kin mind, the techno mind, or whatever they call it. I really like how it looks in orange with a lot more contrast, punky haircuts. I think that fixes a lot of the issues. And that bright green plasma blade that is ready to face any of the galaxy's terrors that aren't very well defended. It's such a silly way to phrase it. But yeah, this Mamma Jamma next to Games Workshop squats with the massive shoulder pads, I like mine a lot better. And you'll totally be able to do it, because Games Workshop typically, like, this happens on all of the Space Marines, but they do kind of sculpt the bare arm, the bare shoulder anyway. So you sort of do have the option of not going on a shoulder pad, and it doesn't look crazy. Like, it's not just a sheer flat surface. You know, they do sculpt the normal shoulder and the armor sockets. So yeah, I'm sure you can leave those shoulders off and it'll be just fine. These squat guys, they're so interesting and fine. I don't know. I feel like these squats haven't found their identity. Like the Caradron Overlords. The Caradron Overlords have really specific design philosophies. I mean, most of it is derivative from steampunk. You know, they have boilers and hemispheres and quilting on all of their soft armor. And they have these giant masks with these sculpted beards. And it kind of it's also taking a little bit from like gladiator masks, where you have these caricature masks over their normal faces. And it makes sense because the Caradron Overlords fly through the sky, probably where the atmosphere is very thin, and so they do have to wear suits that keep their bodies safe from the elements. And I feel like the Caradron Overlords just work, but the squats just feel like, I don't know, they just don't have that feeling yet of like, what, you know, describe the squats to your mom. Well, they're short people and they wear like armor, you know, and they have stuff, they have weapons. I don't know. I don't know if they've found their thing yet, or if I can see their thing yet. I can't see their thing. But we have many units of squats, and so I've been saying that we have to wait to see what the squats really look like to get a sense of the army. And so I've taken everything that they've released for the squats and I photoshopped them together so that I could see what does the entire ensemble look like. And here they are in all their glory. These are the kin, the Leagues of Votann. And they look all right. They look like a Warhammer army. I also just threw in the big robot, or the big mech suit from Necromunda, because I'm sure you'll be able to take it in the Leagues of Votann. I mean, it shares most of the same elements in the design, and it would be really weird if you can't take any of the Necromunda stuff in 40K. I mean, why release two lines that are very similar and essentially the same thing? I mean, they're the same group of squats living in the same time during the 41st millennia. Why would you not be able to take them together? So yeah, I just threw that in the background. And I think this is a pretty darn acceptable little army. Keyword little, they are very small. They showed an example of a squat next to a Space Marine, and the squat almost doesn't fill up their 25mm base. I do appreciate that Games Workshop seems to really be taking scale seriously. I mean, you know, in the 2010s, you know, a Space Marine was the same height as a Guardsman, which was the same height as an Eldar Guardian, which was the same height as an Orc, which was the same height. Everything was exactly the same. Whereas now, everything seems to be properly scaled to what it would be in the universe of Warhammer, which is awesome because it makes your games even more thematic when everything looks correct. Because really, when we're playing Warhammer and we're just smashing our G.I. Joes together, you want it to look real nice. And so I do appreciate that they finally are taking scale seriously. Not for vehicles, because vehicles are still like half scale, but you kind of have to do that so that it's actually still a game. But I think that the squats look really good all together. I think they look like, you know, somebody could look at that and be like, oh, those are squats. That's a squat army. That's a new thing for Warhammer. Also, in the article, they showed off the rear of the squat Hearthguard, and they have a beautifully sculpted butt plate and a really cool like exposed robot spine, which is very Dead Space. It looks really, really cool. So yeah, the Hearthguard are fine. I also, just to keep being negative, I'm not a big fan of the shoulder mounted grenade launcher. I think it would have been maybe more interesting if it was attached to their arm or something, just so they can have the opportunity to aim it. Or maybe have some sort of a little robot helper to aim the gun for them. I think that would have been more interesting than just they have a grenade launcher just attached somewhere to their back. They're fine. I feel like all of the squat things for me have been fine. There hasn't been anything where I'm like, dang, I like that. Except for the hover bikes. The hover bikes are cool. They do look a bit like Zambonis, but they're still cool. I like them. Speaking of things that I like though, the squats were not the only cool new miniature to come out this week. Parabellum reveals the Votann hunting pack for the game Conquest: Last Argument of Kings. And oh my gosh, when I saw these miniatures in my feed, it was magic to behold. The hunting pack dinosaur swarms. It's perfect. It's an amazing concept. I absolutely love it. It looks like it would be a joy to paint. Conquest: Last Argument of Kings is a really, really cool game. I got to demo it at Adepticon. It plays really, really well. It has some absolutely gorgeous miniatures. And these guys are so much fun. I mean, they look like, you get them on the painting desk. You get a little, you scooch a little Army Painter speed paint next to you. You go to town. How much fun does it sound to paint a pack of dinosaurs? I mean, who doesn't love dinosaurs? And this is for a faction of orcs, essentially orcs riding dinosaurs. But yeah, the hunting pack of dinosaurs, and some of them have feathers, some of them have kind of webbed features, and some of them have horns. It's just wonderful. It's just inspired. I love it so much. Who doesn't want to play a war game with dinosaurs? And this maybe kind of brings up why I'm not as fond of the new squats, is because they don't bring anything new. Like you can play Terminators with giant ass shoulder pads and tiny little feet in Space Marines. You've got hover fighters, you've got 10 normal dudes with guns, you have dreadnoughts. All of these units are kind of Space Marine units. But what if the squats had something going on? What if they had pet alien dinosaurs? Or what if they had, every single one of them was on a hover rascal scooter or something? Just something to be like, why the squats are cool? Because bam! Because just having hammers and swords and big shoulder pads, it's not enough to make them feel like, yeah. You know what you'd be missing out if you didn't play squats? You'd be missing out this. You'd be missing out that they've cultivated a rock octopus, and they use that as their battle mounts, and they use that as their heavy support monsters. Or maybe they use their Votann cube that contains all of their history to create these like mechanical abominations or something. Maybe it remains to be seen, probably not. Or maybe, I don't know, we'll see. They've shown off a bunch of squat stuff, but I feel like they haven't shown off anything that's like unique, and I could see them maybe holding off on the uniqueness closer to launch. Like maybe they're showing off the more average things now, and then once we're down to the wire and we're gonna be able to pre-order squats, they're gonna release something a little bit more interesting, but dinosaurs or aliens or hover scooters or something. That's kind of what I want from the squats, is something different. Sisters of Battle are very gothic, and they have small miniatures, and they have tons of flamethrowers. The Adeptus Mechanicus are just covered in technological little bits. The orcs are just the best thing ever. The Tyranids are all bug swarms. Like everything has its little niche. And I feel like the squats haven't dug out their niche yet, except for just, well, they're squats. They're different. They're different. Like, yes, they're a little shorter and stockier, but it's not a selling point in my book. I don't know. But I saw dinosaurs and I wanted to talk about it because I like dinosaurs. But speaking of things that I want to talk about, I went to a used bookstore and I looked around at all the beautiful books, and I decided I wanted a toy. I found this. This is Mars Attacks, the miniatures game by Mantic. This game came out in 2014. It was kickstarted It's since been discontinued, but the great thing about miniature war games is if you have the stuff for it, it's never truly gone. Honestly, if you still have the rules, which are always available online, no game is ever truly dead. But this game is pretty darn cool. My boyfriend bought it for me. This game is based on the movie Mars Attacks from 1995. I just remember Jack Black's famous moments from that movie. But I love that movie. I mean, who doesn't? And a miniatures game based on that property is a hilarious idea. This is one of those games that I think would be perfect to have on the shelf. It toes the line between board game and miniatures game. And I think if you have friends who love board games, they would totally be down to try this out. And this has it's in a board game style, but it has most of its design elements from tabletop wargaming. It's built on the same rules for Dead Zone, which is excellent, although it does have a card system, which is much more board game, where you can have random events and interesting, also very random things happen. I mean, there's a rule where, if you get a card, you can just call in a random airstrike and then you roll 2 dice so that it can randomly determine where that airstrike lands and then hits all of the guys under it. It's a very, very fun miniature war game. And even though it is discontinued, there were a few expansions. I might try to pick a few of them up. Oh, and another thing that was like super, super cool to me is, so the famous Mars Attacks aliens, they wear these silly domes, and it actually comes with vacuum-formed clear domes. And so you paint up your Martian, and then you glue on a dome, and then it's a perfect recreation of the thing from the movie. I love it so much. It's such a fun, cool idea. I think I suggested that Games Workshop should have done something very similar for the squats when they were first released, which they're not gonna do that, but it would be so cool. I mean, if Mantic can do it with a Kickstarter game, you'd think that Games Workshop would do it. I mean, they obviously could do it, but they decided not to for the squats, and it's fine. Squats are interesting, whatever. But yeah, I love this movie. I love this game. It comes with lots of fun stuff. You've got your classic Martians. It comes with 20 Martians. It comes with 10 soldiers, and then it comes with 10 unique humans. Some of them based off of characters from the movie, some of them made up, but it is very, very neat. And it's great that it's based off of the Dead Zone rules, because Dead Zone is an excellent game, and it's actually very, very easy to explain to people how it works. It's a little bit similar to Warhammer 6th edition, where there's a bunch of special rules. Your aliens have armor, which does something special, and then your humans have, what was it called? Honor, where they get benefits for trying to rescue people. And then it's based on a grid system, which a grid system is wonderful and is one of those things that toes the line between a wargaming idea and a board game idea. So you don't have to measure anything, you just move with cubes. The miniatures are actually really, really nice. They're all single piece PVC miniatures, but the detail is actually really good. The seam lines are a little much, but I can save most of that with painting. I mean, a little contrast, armor paint or speed paint. I think that I'm very excited to get this set painted up perfectly. And it comes with a good amount of terrain, mostly brick walls, which works really, really well. But I think this is going to give me a really, really fun reason to buy a bunch of model railroad supplies, because this is set in modern day. And usually it's hard to get, model railroad, park benches, lamp posts, buildings, cottages, barns. It's hard to get those sorts of things into Warhammer 40K because it's just wrong. It's the wrong universe. It's not science fiction. But I think it would be really fun to build a cute little, 2 foot by 2 foot board that is a picture perfect, American dream little house, or a little cul-de-sac, a little neighborhood, white picket fence with laser holes in it. Maybe that famous scene in the movie where the cows are on fire running down the streets. I would love it. I think it would be really, really funny. The population sign with the little cards that say like, oh, there's 1,100 people in this town. I think that would be so much fun. And again, the perfect game to get your friends into wargaming, because who doesn't love Mars Attacks? And who doesn't want to play as a little there's the fun aliens from the movie with their disintegration rays. Very cute, very fun, very exciting. Great find. Good old walking into a bookstore and walking out with a toy. Squats and dinosaurs and Martians. And I actually got some painting done. I finished some Tau, some filthy Tau. I love making fun of the Tau, but I also think that the Tau are pretty cool. I just like to tease them because they're silly. But I enjoyed the spit out of painting these Tau stealth suits. I have 6 of them for a Oops All Stealth Suit Kill team. I'm very excited to play them in a game. I think that they're gonna play interestingly. They have low numbers of activations, but they also have lots of shenanigans to help them get around the board and stay concealed. But I had a great time painting these. I had such a good time painting these that I could be interested in a small Tau army. If there are any Tau players watching, do me a favor and leave a comment. How would I take 6 stealth suits up to 1,000-point Tau army? Like, what HQ do I need? What are some more kits that would help me get a little Tau army going? I would love to know. To paint these, I used my airbrush to get started. I sprayed them a dark red, and then I gave them a Nuln Oil wash, and then I airbrushed them with a light red. But I was kind of unsatisfied, and what happens with the airbrush is the airbrush's blends look beautiful and amazing, and then the paint that I put on top of that doesn't. It doesn't look as good as the airbrush, but I kind of fixed it because the models were looking a little bit dark, and so I mixed a bright red with orange, and then with a brush, I blended that onto the forehead, onto the tips of the arm and weapon, onto the tip of the backpack, and it brought the contrast up a lot, and it brought the color saturation up a lot, but it also helped to blend the perfect airbrush with my less than perfect blends on other parts of the model, because when it had that perfect airbrush blend, and then I started to paint on freehanding, my freehanding didn't match the level of the airbrush. But going back in with a brush and just doing some simple highlights, my own brush highlights aren't as perfect as the airbrush, and so it all blends together really nicely. And I think these are some of the finest minis that I have painted yet. Ooh, and these really fun leafy leaves on the base. These are Games Workshop's Barbed Bracken, and I've really been wanting to try these out, and so I finally thought red Tau would look really good on a green base, complementary colors, and so I decided to pick up a box. This is really expensive. I don't really suggest buying this. It's $30, and you can get it for, what's 50% off of 35, like $5 off. So $25 for this box, not that worth it. You get a lot, although this comes with 4 sprues of Bracken. I used up a sprue on these six guys. I filled that base up pretty good, but yeah, so it wouldn't get you that far, and it's very expensive. Epic Basing is a company that makes some beautiful basing bits just like this that you can 3D print or purchase from them and put on your models. I'd probably suggest that a little bit more than these. I mean, if you got cash to burn, you just like it, they're good. They're also, really smartly, they printed them in a softer PVC, or they casted them in a softer PVC, so they're actually very bendy, which means that they're not gonna snap or break off. And they actually have a surprising amount of bend to them. You can really, they're not coming off. They're really nice. But yeah, very satisfied with these Tau. I like them a lot. I started to look at the Tau Comet Patrol, and I'm like, that big old ghost keel battle suit would look really good standing next to these guys, and it would look really good in these colors and be really fun to paint. It's dangerous. Miniature wargaming is dangerous. Dangerous to the wallet. But I like these Tau. The Tau are cool. I also got a little opportunity to try out some non-metallic metal stuff, which I do need a lot of practice on. Yeah, I'm doing the Farsight Enclave because they're the goodest guys in Warhammer. And I really like them. The Tau are the good guys of Warhammer, but do you know who's even gooder? That's right, our Patreon. Over there, we have a Miniature of the Month club with STLs and physical prints. We also have tons and tons of super cool terrain STLs. We also have one extra episode of EOB a week and voting on what models I end up painting live here on YouTube, just like these Tower and more. It's the best way to support us, so head on over to Patreon to get even more Eons of Battle. We also have merch, link in the description. What a fun week. What a very fun week. But I need to paint some Martians, so bye-bye.